there, and welcome to the UkeStuff channel, and welcome to this UkeGuide review of the Irin Mini-20 ukulele. Now, this I did not pay as much for as the asking price on Amazon, or where it's asking for more than $70 on eBay, or even $60-some on AliExpress. I don't understand the pricing of this instrument. I bought it for just around $17. It's kind of an interesting, tiny little Sopranino, and I have other Sopraninos. I like the small scales. Number one, they make it easy to travel with, but number two, they're just fun to play, fun to have. So in these reviews, the first thing I do is I look at subjective issues, things that are just opinion. Then I talk about the objective data of the instrument, and then I wrap it up with a summary. Now, the cool part about this longer format is that there is a guide on the bottom of your screen where you can jump to parts that you want to watch, and there's an index also in the description. So you don't have to watch this full review if you don't want to. By the way, I always start off with the sound demo because as I was starting this process of making reviews, people always said they just wanted to hear the instrument. So people that just want to hear it can tune in, listen to it, and move on and do the other things that they want to do. So let's begin. First of all, it is ridiculously priced. It right now is selling for $43 on Amazon the last time I looked. Here is an example on Keepa.com to see what the price has been doing on Amazon. So you can kind of see that the going price in that $40 range is pretty accurate, except for like open box returns. Now, in terms of value, it's not a good value at all. So just expect that the price far exceeds the value of what you're getting. Now, the one thing you do get is actually a pretty decent gig bag. I've got a couple other instruments that are Sopraninos, and to be truthful, I would actually not mind swapping some of them just for this gig bag. It's a pretty decent gig bag. It's not a super duper gig bag, but it has a front pocket so you can carry a tuner with you. It's got a handle, and it's got a backpack strap. So some of the other Sopraninos I bought do not come with a gig bag. For example, the Ohana, the O Nino or O Nino Sopranissimos don't come with a bag. You have to buy one. Or the Caramel that I bought, the little Soprano, I've done reviews of both of those. That one didn't come with a bag and you had to buy it. It wasn't that much more expensive, but it also wasn't included in the price of the instrument. So let's take a look at some other issues. Build quality is really the big concern here. There are some scuffs all over, whether the scuffs here on the top, the paint or the finish is really scruffy. It's almost like it wasn't fully sanded before they added the satin to it. There are weird dents and so forth in the kind of either cedar or spruce looking top. Not sure what that wood is. It's all laminate. It's pretty thick laminate too, all the way around. We'll talk about that later when we come to sound. There's scruffiness there. So it's really a scruffy instrument. Now, what really shows is taking a look on the inside. So let's take a look on the inside of the ukulele using the internal Uke Cam. All right, it's time to go ukulele diving. Let's go on in and take a look at what's happening inside here. Okay, first of all, as we look at the back, you can see a giant glue mess and the kerfing doesn't line up. You can see that the bridge screws don't even go into the bridge plate up there, so it misses it altogether. And then just looking at the sides here, a lot of glue mess, kerfing that isn't lined up, you name it. All right, let's try to look at the front of the ukulele. All right, here we're looking at the front. I'm doing the best that I can with this little bit of space. You can see a lot of glue mess. There's the neck block, so it does have a neck block, which is interesting. And again, some kerfing that doesn't line up. Overall, just hastily built, just not to the quality that you'd hope for, even in an inexpensive ukulele. All right, and that has been our quick look at the Irin instrument, Resound in Heaven, model Irin, serial number Mini-20, made in China. So the big issue for me is what is going on with that bridge. It's sitting flat on there now. It's glued on, which is fine. But that bridge support plate is taller up or higher up, and those screws miss completely. So I think that potentially that could result in a fatal flaw of this instrument. The bridge could rip out, who knows what else it could do. So that's something to be concerned about. And as a result, you're going to find that that's going to cause this score to drop more than anything else with this review. Now let's talk about appearance. First of all, I do not like the love on the front. I guess that I'm not the target audience for it, but again, there's nothing wrong with offering a Sopranino that people would want to buy, whether or not they wanted love on the front. I actually don't even mind the heart sound hole, fine, or the fact that it looks like that same heart sound hole is actually made the label. Now it's kind of weird because it says resound in heaven in the inside, and it says Mini-20. I don't even know why they call it the Mini-20, because it's not 20 inches long, but whatever. Otherwise, it appears to have a rosewood fretboard, rosewood bridge, and sort of that mahogany or sapele back and sides with probably an akume, or I doubt it's pure mahogany neck. So, ultimately, I'm not a big fan of how it looks. It's got a scruffy build in places, so its appearance is okay, kind of plain, gimmicky with the love, but if that's your thing, that's great. But again, I don't think I'd tell you to buy this one, and we'll get to that at the end of this video. Now, in terms of availability, it's out there, but it's ridiculously expensive. eBay, these are over $70. On AliExpress, over $60. And even on Amazon, it's, $43, getting towards $45. Why? This is not worth it. For $45 or for $5 or $10 more, you can get a really functional ukulele from a bunch of different companies, and we've reviewed a bunch of those ukuleles lately on this channel. So unless you are really smitten with this particular ukulele, I wouldn't do it. So yeah, but anyhow, they're out there. If you want to buy one, you can have one at your house in just a few days. In terms of playability, a couple things. First of all, it's not super deep, but it does feel thicker than it needs to be because of the C shape of it. So even though by nature it isn't that deep, it's deeper than it needs to be. So I'd like it with a little flatter profile, to be honest with you. It has a 35mm nut, and it could be helped. And in fact, the nut extends over the fretboard a little bit. So the fretboard is narrower than the nut, and that's something that you'd really want to sand down just for feel and appearance. But the nut is a 35mm nut. And generally the spacing of these strings is what you would see with a 35mm ukulele. So many sopranos in concerts, even some tenors. So with all that in mind, it's kind of a playable mini ukulele in the regards to some other companies that actually make it even a smaller nut, 33 or 32mm for that nut. Well, it kind of keeps that general measurement. Now, it could even bump up a little wider to help you out a little bit, but it's overall playable. The frets are not sharp. I haven't sanded them down, so that's okay. And the action is generally okay too, although on a smaller scale, I think you could go even shorter than what it's at. For example, there seems to be a lot of string bending, even though it's only, I think, 0.5mm at the first fret, which is what you'd normally want. When you get to be this small of a scale, you want even less than that up there. So again, it's playable, and I'll just leave it at that. Now, sound quality. Not good. Not good at all. It's muted. There's some sustain, but it's not a pretty sustain. You could swap different strings on it and it wouldn't make much of a difference. It's not very loud. It's got a darker tone, and it just sort of gets lost. Now, you might say that's true of many sopraninos and sopranissimos, and that's probably true, but at the same time, it's not great sounding. Now, that all said, it does play as an instrument. I do worry again about the bridge lifting at some point with the tension under the strings, but you can actually get some music out of this, unlike another ukulele I recently reviewed that I had to give 0 to. So it's actually playable as an ukulele. I'm not going to say that it's not, but again, it's not a real pretty sound. Now, one of the things I like to do is to use the app Tonal Energy Tuner to take a look at what's happening with the sound of the instrument, both in sustain and what sounds are activating when you play the instrument. So I just usually play a C chord, and it'd be the G chord on a baritone ukulele. And let's take a look and see what it does. Here's the C chord. Now let me explain what you're seeing. When you see that entire range freeze, those aren't the notes that are hanging on. That's just where the sound last stopped. And there is really not much of a sustain for the iPad app to pick up and to register as notes that are being held with a sustaining sound. So you get lots of the initial range of notes, and then it just sort of fades out with the exception of a couple of the lower strings that seem to hang on a little bit. It's not a good sound. Not a good sound at all. Now let's talk about the objective data about this instrument. So it is a Sopranino, and it is 11.25 inches from nut to saddle. And yes, that is a little bit of a weird measurement. Usually you'd see 11 probably on the button. It has 12 frets to the body, and that's all you get. You have no side position markers. The body style is a traditional double bout. The soundboard is some kind of laminate. It kind of looks like a cedar to me. I think I saw redwood or something on one of the ads, so it could be kind of an imitation of redwood. It's definitely laminate. It's definitely thick. And the back and sides are laminate sapele. So I think it's maybe even potentially laminate spruce. I'm not sure with what it is. The fretboard is rosewood. The bridge is rosewood, and it's a tie bar. And again, it's screwed in below the bridge plate, which is a concern. Of course, it does not have a radius fretboard. The nut and saddle are plastic, and the saddle is not compensated. Like many entry-level ukuleles, it's a satin finish, even though it's kind of a dull satin finish. Its entire length is 18.25 inches from the tip of the crown to the bottom. I don't know why they call it the Irin Mini-20. They should call it the Irin Mini-18. I think would be more appropriate. And it weighs only 10.9 ounces and is a little top heavy, mainly because of the tuners. The tuners are open geared tuners, and they are gigantic for this application. The action at the first fret is 0.5 millimeters, but it feels way higher than that, being a smaller scale instrument. Mim's Ukes. Mim will always set up an ukulele. When she sells an Ohana Sopranino, she works really hard to make sure that it's playable and the strings don't bend too much when you try to play them in tune. So setup is really, really critical on these smaller ukuleles, and this one could be set up better. The action at the 12th fret is pretty high at 3.25 millimeters. Anything above 3 is just too high. Generally, I shoot for about 2.5 millimeters on my ukuleles. The nut width is 34.79 millimeters, and that's pretty amazing considering. Most, again, Sopraninos have an even smaller nut than that, although, as I mentioned, the nut doesn't line up with the fretboard. I look at the spacing at the first fret, just to give you an idea how far apart the strings are. The strings are 8.56 millimeters apart from each other at the first fret, 28.45 millimeters G to A. There are some instruments that are much more narrow than that at 35 millimeter nuts. So really, it's kind of spacious for a Sopranino. They got that part generally right, but a few other things wrong in the process. And the depth at the third fret is 20.68 millimeters. So I measure from the top of the string to the bottom of the neck at the third fret, 20.68 millimeter. That isn't a lot, but at the same time, on such a small scale instrument and on a shortened neck anyway, it feels chunkier than it needs to be. So those are the key measurements of this instrument. Now let's summarize what we're looking at here. This is a Sopranino ukulele by Irin that sells for just way too much. $45 is way too much for this ukulele. I'm sorry, but it just is. It's caught my eye for a while because I like Sopraninos. Admittedly, I'm not a big fan of the styling. I would prefer just a plain traditional ukulele with much thinner laminate and better construction overall. Ultimately, there are much better Sopranino ukuleles on the market. I would send you right now, the safest place to go is Ohana, and to go through Mim's Ukes or another Ohana dealer, Uke Republic, and use them because they will make sure that it's set up right for you. Now, those little ukuleles do cost much more, but you do get a much better instrument. There are also other options if you want to go even smaller scale. There's Andy's ukuleles over in the UK. but his ukuleles are sold by auction. There's no guarantee that you get one, and they would cost almost 10 times as much to get. But again, then you're getting a super duper instrument, whereas this is not. If I were to give this a rating, and that's one of the things that I do is I give instruments a rating, I would give this instrument just a 1 ukulele out of 5. It gets the 1 because it plays, but my big issue, again, is that the bridge is not screwed into the bridge plate, and at some point that's a recipe for disaster. That's what we call a critical flaw on an instrument. So I cannot recommend it to you. I give it 1 star because it can play. If the bridge was in the right spot, I might give it 2, 1.5 to 2, but as it stands, it's a 1 star. And really the best part about the instrument, other than being a tiny little instrument that you could put on your shelf, but that's a lot for a knick-knack, right? But actually the best part is the gig bag. So, you know, that's where it's at. So that is the Irin Mini-20 Sopranino ukulele. I hope you're having a great day. I appreciate you watching the video, and I will be back soon with some more Uke stuff for you.